The most basic part of our job is that human life takes precedence over any other concerns. When a possibility of a savable life exists, it's our duty and our number one priority to make every effort possible to attempt to save that life. Rescue is and always should be given the highest level of priority on scene. Situations may arise where crews are required to perform a life-saving operation and target potential savable victims ahead of a hose line. VEIS is a tactic that can give a victim the best chance of survival. VEIS, or Vent, Enter, Isolate, Search, sounds pretty simple. We go up, we break a window, we enter into the room, we isolate that room by shutting the door, we search the room. If we find somebody, we remove that victim. If not, we get out. Don't let the ease of the name fool us. This takes a lot of practice and takes a lot of understanding of what you're seeing and how what you see affects what you're going to do next, and to be able to judge the amount of time you need to complete that search. VEIS is a rapid, strategic search of a compartment or compartments where the high probability of a savable victim exists. In this video today that we're going to show you, we're going to discuss the tactical considerations as well as demonstrate the steps and procedures to execute this life-saving operation. VEIS should only be performed when there is a high probability of rescuing a victim. So that's either a victim is reported to us in a specific room, or we strongly suspect that based on our size up that there's a victim inside in a specific area of the building, and VES is our quickest way to access that specific area due to traditional ingress points being blocked by fire or some other kind of impediment. Our success when it comes to VEIS depends on a couple different things. First is going to be our pre-planning and our training. Second is going to be a good size up when we get on scene. Third is recognizing a VEIS situation and quickly implementing VEIS. And fourth is going to be strong communication. And we'll dive into a little further detail on all of those in this video. Once we decide to do VEIS, time is already against us due to the fire obviously continuing to grow and conditions continuing to deteriorate. So we need to consider it early. VEIS should be considered one of our primary tactics when trying to quickly access a potentially viable victim. It can't really be an afterthought. At that point, it may be too late. It's something that if we're going to implement it, we need to implement it quickly. The first part of being prepared to implement this quickly on scene is a tactic that we have to have trained on multiple times. This isn't one of those things that we can train on once and say we have it down. It's definitely one of those high-risk, low-frequency events that we need to be very proficient at. And that all starts with knowing our crew members and their capabilities and their strengths and weaknesses. You know, when it comes to each position for VEIS, you kind of have your pre-assignments. We need to assemble all the required tools. Time is of the essence. We can't waste time going back to the rig because we forgot something. We need to get on scene. We need to know exactly where our tools are located. Not that way we don't waste time. As with any operation, a good size up is going to dictate how our operation is going to run. Conditions are going to dictate our tactics. And the responsibility of a good size up is the responsibility lies with everybody on scene, not just with the officer. A good size up can be the difference between life and death, not just for the victims, but for us as well. So as we approach, there's a few things to look for on a good size up, specifically if we've been tasked with VEIS or search for that matter. Obviously the type of building and its construction makes a big difference. The type of building can tell us, how much time we have inside there. Whether it's a single family or a multifamily dwelling, when we talk about trying to locate areas where we think there could be potential victims. The size of the building. These big residences, these starter mansions that people are building, obviously a big residence can indicate that the interior rooms are also going to be large. Therefore, they're going to take a lot longer to search. And so you need to anticipate the search taking longer. And obviously, the longer we're inside these buildings, the better the odds of something catastrophic happening if we're not getting water on that fire. Pay attention to our windows. The size and the shape can often indicate what kind of room is on the back side of that glass. Our large, expansive windows that are in clusters, normally that's going to indicate a common area such as a living room, game room, kitchen, dining room, etc. Moderate sized windows are normally going to be our bedrooms. And then small or privacy glass windows are normally our bathrooms, our hallways, or our stairways. Burglar bars can definitely be a red flag when it comes to the potential doing VEIS. The amount of time required to remove the bars can greatly impede the ability to safely and effectively execute the operation of VEIS. On our size ups, also pay attention to the location of the fire, especially in relation to where we are going to break glass. Obviously, the V in VEIS stands for ventilate, so we're going to go break glass, and when we break glass, it's going to vent that, and it's going to pull that fire towards the area that we broke that glass. So just anticipate that. Pay attention to how those two are related. If we have multiple rooms that we're going to possibly do VEIS on, obviously we want to start closest to the fire. That way we don't pull that fire over top of the couple of the other rooms that we're going to do later on. The tools required for VEIS are a 6-foot pole, wind pole, New York hook, or something similar, a Halligan and or axe, a thermal, and then a ladder if it's something above the first floor. All right, so there's 4 basic steps when it comes to VEIS. Obviously, it's going to be to vent, enter, isolate, and search. We'll go ahead and kind of break down each one of those and talk about them individually. So first is ventilate. So we're going to break the glass for the specific room that we're looking to go into, and we're going to start breaking that glass at the top and then work our way down. Make sure you clear all the glass and the whole frame and everything out of that opening. We want it to be clean. If we leave anything in the way there, it can impede our ingress or our egress, whether it's for us or our victim, and really come back and bite us in the butt. And also, if we don't clear all the glass out, there's been times where victims have been thrown out and they've literally been gutted open by the glass that was left on the bottom of the frame. So obviously pretty counterproductive if we gut our patient open. So make sure you use your tool and literally rake all that glass out of there, get it nice and clean before we go in. Once you break that glass, allow that room to breathe, or burp if you will. Kind of see how it's going to react. Pay attention to your fire. If the conditions of the room are close to flashover, obviously we don't want to be caught in the flow path when that room flashes and have our head right up in there with the ball of fire. So next, the E is for enter. Before we enter that room, we want to sweep or kind of gently feel with our tool right below that windowsill before we actually sound that floor. Obviously, we don't want to risk sounding or pounding firmly on top of a victim. So first thing we want to do is make a sweep right below the window frame, right below the windowsill. Make sure there's no victims there. Next, now we are going to firmly pound, firmly sound with our tool to make sure that floor is going to hold us when we make entrance. Obviously, this especially is prevalent when it comes to upper level floors, or obviously anything that's pier and beam. Once again, this is not a gentle tap. It's just like on a roof. Use kind of the broad side of your tool and pound it firmly to make sure it's going to hold our weight. So when we enter into the room, a common method is to go head first and land on your hands and kind of crawl in, and using your legs, widening them out to slow you down as you go in. This is definitely an acceptable practice. Nothing wrong with it. Just know that it can be risky compared to other methods. Obviously, we sacrifice the ability to move the other direction and back out if conditions suddenly change, because all of our weight is inside that room. So just kind of realize that. There is a safer alternative, and that's to straddle the windowsill. Allows us to have a little more control when we're entering and exiting the building.
All right, guys, I know what you're thinking. Is that Jake with a fake mustache? It's not. All right, guys, we're gonna talk about entering a window safely instead of just diving in head first. If we feel for the window, in the window, and feel for the floor, know we can make a safe entrance. This is a little more controlled manner than just a head first dive. So we go up, we're gonna put a leg through and actually straddle the windowsill. The next thing we need to do is actually slide our butt back to the far side of the sill. This allows us to lay forward, get our head out of the upper area of the window where it's hot and the bad stuff. So we want to get our head down and then wrap our outside arm around the outside of the building. That's going to be our anchor point to swing in. On the inside, I'm feeling for the floor with my leg and my inside arm to stop my fall. Another added benefit of this method is this allows you a little bit more controlled descent into the room, and if conditions change rapidly as you're coming in, it allows you the ability to reverse your track. When you dive in head first, you're committed at that point all the way. This gives you an anchor point here, your legs locked here. If you need to, you can pull yourself back out. Woo!
So at the same time the searcher is making entry, the orienter is getting into position to assist with the search. We need to be right behind that searcher. That way, as soon as they're inside the room, we're up there to assist them with that tick, letting them know where that doorway is so they can quickly get over there and isolate the room. Seems obvious, but make sure your tick's on prior to even breaking glass or throwing the ladder. Once again, preparation and having a solid game plan ahead of time is vital to the success of this operation. With the tick, if you're the orienter, assess the conditions, locate the door, and guide the searcher, and then also assist in locating victims. So next is I for isolate, like we just talked about. As the orienter, you're using your tick to help guide that searcher to quickly isolate the room. Conditions and the cards we're dealt obviously are going to dictate how we proceed. If the door is open, we're going to immediately locate that door. Remember how we talked about numbering our walls. If you can tell exactly where that door is, use those numbers to help guide that searcher. That way they know directly where to go. For example, the door is in the 2-3 corner or the 3-4 corner. That'll get that searcher going in the right direction. We're going to send the searcher to that door, and the searcher is going to get there. We're going to give a quick sweep outside of that door into the hallway or common area. Get down on your belly, get low, try to get below that thermal plane, hook your foot onto the door frame. That way you stay oriented and you don't lose that anchor point. But we want to give a quick sweep as far as we can and look as far as we can outside that door just quickly. Once again, get low on your belly below that thermal plane so we can hopefully see further. If there's nothing there, shut the door and we're going to isolate the room. Once again, the orienter will be assisting by guiding the searcher. We must isolate the room. We must do this even prior to our search. Even if we see a victim, immediately when we make entry, we still got to isolate that room. Cutting off the flow path is the only way that we're going to limit the fire's ability to spread or to enter our location. Once we get that door shut and we cut off that flow path, that's going to allow the smoke to vent and lift and improve conditions in that room. And that's going to help our victim survivability rate. It's going to buy us more time to get that victim out of there. All right, now on to the S of VEIS. S is for search. Communication is critical. That's going to, be what makes or breaks this whole operation. So as a searcher, continue to listen to the orienter. They're going to guide you. Orienter, be sure that you're giving clear and specific directions. Over here, over there, that doesn't cut it. They don't know what here or there is. You can use right, left, head towards the 3 wall, head towards the 3-4 corner, etc. You need to constantly be in communication. That keeps each other up to date on your status, as well as it keeps that searcher oriented to the exit and allows them to know exactly which direction to go in case something goes south. If and when a victim is found as a searcher, be sure to immediately relay that information to the orienter, and then orienter, make sure you immediately relay that information to command. Now it's time to remove the victim. If the victim is small, simply pick them up and hand them out the window. For larger victims, remember the drags and lifts that we reviewed during the search and rescue class back in August. If a second member is required inside, the orienter then since they're already at the window, shall enter the structure, and a third member is going to come up and take over that window position. Anytime that we are putting a victim out onto a ladder, so we're on an upper level, we're not doing a first floor VEIS, we need to have 2 members inside helping get that victim out of the window onto the ladder. That's going to allow it to be more controlled, reduce the odds of the victim and or the person at the window on that ladder from falling off. It needs to be a lot more controlled, obviously, if we're above grade. All right, so we'll talk about doing VEIS in multiple rooms. So whatever the situation may be, we may have to repeat the process, whether it's an apartment complex or any other reason that we have multiple rooms that we think VEIS is going to be the quickest way to get to these potentially viable areas for these victims. So like we talked about earlier, if we're going to do multiple rooms on your size up, you need to pay attention to where the fire is in relation to where you're going to do VEIS, and we need to start closest to the fire and work our way back. If we're going to do it in multiple rooms, it has to be done quickly and safely. Consider switching the orienter and the searcher between rooms if you're the only members doing it. We will do this in an effort to conserve energy as well as manage our air. Remember to constantly survey the building and fire conditions. Obviously, until hose lines are in place, the fire continues to grow and the building continues to degrade. So the longer it takes, obviously multiple rooms are going to take quite a bit of time. Really need to pay attention to what our fire conditions are doing and our building conditions. Like we talked about, communication is key to the success of this, especially between the crew members. But communication also is key as far as keeping command up to date on our status. So anytime we're going to do VEIS and implement that, command needs to know, and we need to tell them specifically on what side of the house we're doing it and, at what level, first floor, second floor. Other things that need to be relayed to command, it's anytime a body enters or exits the structure. So the first searcher goes in, command needs to know. If a second searcher is required inside, command needs to know. And then anytime anybody comes out of the building. So that goes for victims as well as firefighters. So if we remove a victim, be sure to notify command. And also you need to notify command once all searchers are out of the building as well. That way we can maintain our accountability. There's a few guidelines we can look at that can help us in our decision-making process when we're trying to figure out if VEIS is the right tactic for when we get on scene. So first of all, we have to have reason to believe that we can make a viable rescue in a specific area, and that VEIS is going to be the quickest way to get to that victim. Number two, the space isn't fully involved or have a lot of heavy fire, and it doesn't show indications of imminent flashover. Remember, with VEIS, we don't have a hose line. We're going ahead of the hose line, so obviously if there's heavy fire conditions, we're not going to be able to get in there and adequately search that area. Number three, we have to have the ability to compartmentalize that area. If we don't know or if we don't feel like we can compartmentalize that area, we need to use extreme caution because obviously our time of operation is greatly limited. But obviously the fire and smoke conditions from each individual scenario are going to dictate our decision. So everyone's going to be different. So a lot of that's going to depend on what we read when we get on scene. But as a general rule, if we can't compartmentalize that area, it's going to be a no-go for VEIS. As far as guidelines for a no-go when it comes to considering VEIS, number one, if we can tell there's no viable rescue to be made due to the existing conditions of heavy fire in that particular compartment where we believe the victim to be located. Number two, there's signs of imminent flashover in the room, or for that matter, in the room below it if we're looking to do VEIS on an upper level. If there's a situation where the window or door below our VEIS entry point is fully involved and venting to the exterior, obviously that can impede our ingress or egress and make it a guide to have a no-go when it comes to trying to execute a VEIS. Next would be if we don't have the ability to compartmentalize and isolate the area that we are going to do VEIS. Once again, every situation is going to dictate what's different depending on the conditions that we read, but as a general rule, we need to be able to isolate the area. If PPV, positive pressure ventilation, is put into operation, the decision to VEIS should be avoided. Obviously, the increase in pressure at the entry point of the building where they're injecting that air, that's going to increase the potential for the flow path to move towards our direction before we can get that room isolated. So obviously, if you're in a situation where you think you're going to implement VEIS and there is a positive pressure fan going, you need to radio to command to make sure they cut that fan off before you attempt to do a VEIS. So as a quick recap, to be successful in doing VEIS, first we need to have good pre-planning and training. We need to have a game plan ahead of time and be proficient as a crew. And we need to know who's on our crew, know our people, know their strengths and weaknesses, and have some pre-assignments and know who's going to be best in each position. Second is going to be a good size up. Third, we're going to quickly recognize a VEIS situation and implement it quickly. Remember, it's where we have a suspected victim in a very specific and viable location, and VEIS is going to be the quickest way to access that victim. And then 4, strong communication, and that is with each other and also with command.